"They abused and beat me," said the Apache girl. The rancher let her stay. The sun had just begun to rise over the dry, dusty land, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. In the distance, a lone figure moved slowly across the desert. She was a young Apache girl, barely 14, her clothes torn and dusty, her small frame trembling from exhaustion and fear. Her dark hair, tangled and knotted, hung over her face, hiding the tears that refused to stop falling. Every step she took was careful, cautious, because she had learned long ago that one wrong movement could bring pain. She remembered the last time she had made a mistake at home, and the memory made her shiver. She stopped for a moment, looking around at the vast expanse of land. The desert was empty, silent except for the whispering wind and the occasional cry of a bird overhead. She felt a strange mix of fear and relief. Fear because she was alone, with nowhere safe to go. Relief because she was finally away from the place that had hurt her every day. She thought of her family, not with love, but with a heavy sadness. She remembered the yelling, the angry faces, and the harsh words that had filled her home. And she remembered the beatings, the pain that she had learned to expect whenever she did something wrong. She had counted every bruise on her body that morning, wondering if the world would ever be kind. Her stomach growled. She had not eaten properly for more than a day. She had taken a few sips of water from a small creek near the edge of the desert, but it was not enough to fill her hunger. Her throat was dry, and her lips were cracked. Still, she moved forward. Survival had become a habit for her, a daily struggle that she could not stop. She had learned to hide, to be quiet, to make herself small so that no one would notice her. The desert, though harsh, was better than the place she had run from. As she walked, her mind wandered back to the last fight she had had with her family. She had only tried to speak up once, to ask for something she needed. Her voice had been small, trembling, but it had been enough to anger the people who were supposed to care for her. The punishment had been quick and painful, leaving her body marked and her spirit heavier than before. She remembered curling into a ball, tears soaking the ground beneath her and praying silently for a way out. That night, she had decided she would not stay another day in a home that caused her nothing but pain. She would leave, no matter how hard it might be. The desert seemed endless, and the sun climbed higher in the sky, burning her skin. She walked slowly, trying to conserve energy, but every step felt heavier than the last. Her feet were sore, and her body ached. She stumbled over rocks and uneven sand, and sometimes she fell, scraping her knees and hands, but she never stopped. She had learned that stopping too long meant danger. She could not risk being found, for she knew the people who had hurt her would come looking. Hours passed, though she did not know exactly how many. Time felt different when you were alone in the desert. Every sound, every shadow seemed important. She had learned to notice the small things, the rustle of a bush, the movement of an animal, the distant hum of insects. They were signs that life still existed around her, but they also reminded her that danger could be near. She tried to keep calm, but her heart raced with every sound. By midday, her energy was almost gone. She found a small shaded area under a rocky ledge and collapsed, letting her body rest for a moment. Her hands shook as she pulled herself close to the rocks, trying to hide from the world. She felt the warmth of the sun and the harshness of the land, but for now, she allowed herself a brief pause. She thought about what she would do next. She had no plan, only the hope that she might find safety somewhere, someone who would not hurt her, someone who would care. In the distance, she saw a small figure moving slowly among the hills. At first, she was too tired to pay attention, but then she realized it was a person, Fear rose in her chest like a heavy weight. She crouched low, trying to stay hidden. She did not know who it was. It could be someone who would take her back. It could be someone worse. But she also felt a spark of hope. Maybe it was someone kind. Maybe it was the answer to her prayers. Someone who would help her. She decided to take a risk. She stood slowly, brushing the dust from her clothes, and began walking toward the figure, her steps cautious but determined. The closer she got, the more she could see. It was a man, middle-aged, dressed in simple clothes with a wide-brimmed hat to protect him from the sun. He was tending to cattle, moving carefully among them, and did not seem to notice her at first. Her heart beat faster. She had never spoken to a stranger before. The words seemed heavy in her throat, but finally she found the courage to call out softly. "Excuse me," she whispered, her voice trembling. The man turned, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, neither of them moved. She saw concern in his eyes, and that made her take another step forward. I need help," she said, the words barely audible. They hurt me at home. I had to leave." The man's expression softened. He did not speak harshly, and he did not seem angry. Instead, he nodded slowly and said, "Come here, you can rest." Tears filled her eyes, and she sank to the ground, relief washing over her. She felt safe for the first time in what seemed like forever. The man gave her water and food, and for the first time, she ate without fear. She noticed that the ranch was clean and quiet, a place where life moved slowly, where the world seemed to be kind instead of cruel. As the day passed, she began to feel a small sense of hope. She talked a little, though her voice was quiet and shaky, telling the man small pieces of her story. She did not speak of everything yet. Some things were too painful. But she said enough for him to understand that she had suffered, that she needed protection, and that she wanted to stay away from the people who had hurt her. The man listened patiently, without judgment or anger. He gave her a place to sleep, a small room in the ranch where she could rest safely. That night, as she lay on the bed, she felt a strange feeling she had not known in a long time. She felt that maybe, just maybe, the world could be kind. She closed her eyes, holding on to that hope, knowing that tomorrow would be another hard day, but also knowing that she was not completely alone anymore. The next morning, the young Apache girl woke to the soft sounds of the ranch, the gentle lowing of cows, the flapping of birds' wings, and the distant clatter of tools carried across the warm, dry air. She blinked, sunlight spilling into the small room where she slept, and for a moment she forgot the fear and pain she had carried for so long. The walls were clean, the bed was soft, and no one yelled at her. It was quiet and safe, something she had not known in years. She sat on the edge of the bed, her small hands clutching the blanket, and looked out the window. The ranch stretched wide, with green pastures, wooden fences, and animals moving slowly in the morning light. For a moment she felt a mix of wonder and disbelief. Could a place really exist where no one hurt her? Where she could just be? The thought made her heart flutter with a tiny spark of hope. A knock on the door startled her, and she quickly wiped the sleep from her eyes. The rancher stepped inside, his face calm but warm. "Morning," he said softly. "I thought you might like something to eat." He held out a simple breakfast of bread, eggs, and milk. The girl hesitated, unsure if it was real. She had grown used to being punished for eating, or even speaking. She slowly took the food, her hands shaking slightly, and nodded. "Sit," the rancher said, motioning to the small chair beside the table. He did not push, he did not scold. He waited patiently, letting her eat at her own pace. As she took her first bites, she noticed how quiet and kind he was. There was no anger in his voice, no sharp words, only calmness. For the first time in a long while, she began to feel safe enough to breathe. After breakfast, the rancher took her outside. The sun was warm but not too hot, and a gentle breeze moved through the grass. He showed her around the ranch, pointing out the chickens, the cows, and the horses. She watched the animals with wide eyes, fascinated by their calm movements. She had always loved animals, but at home, she had never been allowed to care for them. Now, she could touch them, feed them, and watch them without fear. "You like animals?" the rancher asked gently. She nodded slowly, a small smile forming on her lips. I love them," she said quietly. "They are nice?" "Yes," he said. "They can be very kind if you treat them with care." She listened carefully, soaking in the sound of his voice. There was no anger, no sharpness, only kindness. She realized that this man, this stranger, was offering her something she had never had: trust. She could not remember the last time someone had trusted her, or had been patient enough to show her kindness without expecting anything in return. Over the next few days, the girl began helping with small chores on the ranch. She fed the chickens, collected eggs, and carried water to the animals. At first, she moved slowly, unsure of herself, afraid of making a mistake and being punished. But the rancher did not scold her. If she spilled water or dropped an egg, he would simply show her how to do it again, with patience. Slowly, she began to gain confidence. The animals seemed to sense her gentle nature. The chickens did not run from her. The cows let her approach them, and the horses nuzzled her hand without fear. She felt a strange happiness in caring for them. For the first time, she felt that her hands could do something good, something kind, instead of only feeling pain. One afternoon, while she was feeding the horses, the rancher approached her again. He knelt down, speaking softly. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," he said. "But if you want to, I would like to hear your story. Only if you feel ready." The girl hesitated. She had spent so long hiding her feelings, pretending nothing was wrong, that speaking about her past felt impossible. But something about the rancher's calm eyes made her feel safe. She took a deep breath and began, slowly, carefully, telling him pieces of her life. They hurt me at home," she whispered. "They hit me when I did something wrong, when I tried to speak. I couldn't stay there anymore. I ran." The rancher nodded, listening closely. He did not interrupt, did not question her, and did not show shock or anger. He simply listened. His patience made her feel heard, something she had not experienced before. As she spoke, small tears ran down her cheeks, and he quietly offered a clean cloth to wipe them. She accepted it, feeling a little relief that someone cared enough to notice her pain. Days turned into weeks, and she slowly began to adjust to life on the ranch. The routine helped her, feeding the animals, helping in the garden, learning how to gather eggs and milk the cows gave her purpose. She learned that life could have rhythm, even after so much chaos. She began to wake up each morning not just with fear, but with a small sense of hope. Her trust in the rancher grew, but it was cautious. She had learned that trusting people often brought pain. But he never disappointed her. Every time she faltered or made a mistake, he only guided her gently. Over time, she began to smile more, laugh more, and even talk freely. The ranch became her safe space, a place where she could be herself. One evening, as the sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in orange and pink, the girl sat quietly on the porch. She watched the animals settle down for the night and listened to the soft sounds of the wind. The rancher joined her, sitting beside her without speaking at first. Then he said softly, "You're safe here. No one will hurt you." She nodded, tears of gratitude in her eyes. She wanted to believe him, and with each passing day, she began to. The fear that had been in her chest for so long began to soften, replaced with a fragile but growing hope. For the first time in her life, she felt that there might be a future where she was not afraid, a life where she could grow, learn, and heal. The Apache girl thought about her past, about the people who had hurt her. She felt sadness and anger, but she also felt something new, strength. She realized that she had survived everything so far, and now she had a chance to build a new life. The rancher, the animals, the quiet mornings, and the safe nights, they all gave her a chance to grow, to breathe, and to heal. Even though she knew the road ahead would not be easy, she felt ready. She had a small place in the world where she could be herself, where she could trust again, and where kindness existed. That evening, as the stars appeared in the sky, she whispered a quiet promise to herself. She would survive, she would heal, and she would learn to trust again. For the first time in a long while, she slept peacefully, surrounded by safety, warmth, and the quiet rhythm of life on the ranch. The desert, once a lonely and harsh place, now felt like a bridge to something better, a new life waiting for her just beyond the horizon. Days on the ranch turned into weeks, but life was not always easy for the young Apache girl. Even though she was safe now, her past still followed her like a shadow. Some mornings, she would wake up trembling, remembering the harsh words and harsh hands from the home she had run from. She would curl up on her bed for a few moments, trying to breathe, trying to remind herself that she was no longer there. Each day was a struggle between fear and hope, and learning to trust the world was harder than feeding the animals or collecting eggs. The rancher noticed her hesitation. He would come quietly, not saying much at first, just sitting beside her while she worked. Sometimes he would speak softly, asking her small questions, like what she wanted to do that day or how she was feeling. Other times, he would leave her to her chores, giving her space, but always keeping a watchful eye. Slowly, the girl learned that he would not hurt her, that mistakes were part of learning, and that patience and kindness could exist in people. One afternoon, the rancher asked her to help him with the cows. He taught her how to guide them into the pen, how to move slowly and speak softly, so the animals would not be afraid. At first she struggled, her hands shaking and her heart racing. One cow nudged her slightly and she jumped back, afraid she had done something wrong. The rancher smiled gently and guided her hands, showing her the correct way to lead the animals. "You see," he said softly, "they they trust you just like I do." The girl's heart swelled with a small pride. She had never felt trusted before. Not truly. To feel it now, to see it in the animals' calm eyes, gave her a sense of purpose she had never known. But even with this small victory, the old fears would not leave entirely. Sometimes when the wind blew in a certain way, or when a voice shouted in the distance, she would flinch and retreat. She also struggled with her own feelings of shame. She thought about the past constantly, blaming herself for the abuse she had suffered. Why had she not been strong enough to stop it? Why had she allowed herself to be hurt? These thoughts came uninvited, and she often had to fight them back. The rancher noticed her quiet moments of fear and sadness, and he tried to help by sharing gentle stories about life, about people, and about hope. He never forced her to speak or reveal anything she was not ready to share. One evening, while she was feeding the chickens, she saw a few children from the nearby town playing by the road. They laughed and ran, calling to each other, and for a moment, she felt a pang of longing. She wanted to join them, to play, to be like any other child, but fear held her back. She had learned that trusting others could bring pain, and even the sight of children enjoying life reminded her of the dangers of the outside world. The rancher noticed her staring at the children. He came to her side and said softly, "It's okay to watch them for now. You don't have to join until you feel ready." She nodded, thankful for his understanding. It amazed her how patient he was, how he seemed to know when to push and when to let her be. Over time, she realized that life could be gentle, that it could allow her to heal at her own pace. But even with this realization, the struggle was real. Some nights, she would wake up sweating and trembling, haunted by memories she could not forget. One night, the rancher found her sitting outside, staring at the stars. She had tears in her eyes, and her hands were tightly clasped in her lap. He sat beside her quietly and waited. After a few moments, she spoke softly. "I keep seeing them," she whispered. "The people who hurt me. I can't stop remembering." The rancher nodded slowly. "It is normal," he said gently. "The past stays with us even when we are safe. But you are not there anymore. You are here. You are learning to live again. That is what matters." His words were like a small light in the darkness. They did not erase the memories, but they gave her a reason to keep going. She realized that she could survive the past, that she could grow stronger every day, and that she did not have to face the world alone. During the following weeks, she began learning more about the ranch. She helped repair fences, tended the garden, and learned how to carry water to the animals. Each task gave her confidence, teaching her that she was capable and useful. Slowly, she began to smile more, to laugh more, and to speak more freely. She even began to play with the young animals, letting them run around her, nuzzle her hands, and follow her wherever she went. These small moments of joy reminded her that life could be gentle and kind. The rancher also introduced her to reading. She had never gone to school before, and words on a page had seemed strange and distant. Now she discovered the power of stories, learning about people who had faced struggles and overcome them. Each story gave her hope and inspired her. She realized that life could be hard, but it could also be beautiful. She began writing small notes about her day, recording her thoughts and feelings. Writing became a way to understand herself, to release the fears that sometimes crowded her mind. Despite the progress she made, challenges continued. Sometimes she would hear the distant voices of strangers or catch a glimpse of someone walking near the ranch, and her heart would race. Even simple mistakes on chores would make her feel anxious, as though she was back in the house she had run from. But the rancher always guided her gently, never scolding, never raising his voice. Slowly, she learned to take deep breaths, to calm herself, and to face her fears. One afternoon, a storm approached. Dark clouds covered the sky, and the wind began to whip across the fields. The girl panicked at first, running to the barn for shelter with the animals. She shook, afraid that something bad would happen. The rancher stayed close, holding her hand and speaking softly. "Storms come and go," he said gently. "They do not last forever, and neither will fear. You are stronger than you think." His words grounded her. She realized that just like the storm, fear was temporary. She could survive it just as she had survived everything before. That night, as the storm raged outside, She felt a small spark of strength growing inside her. She had survived the desert, the abuse, and her own fears. Now she was learning to survive life, even in a place full of new challenges. As weeks turned into months, she noticed changes in herself. She was braver than she had ever imagined. She could speak her thoughts without fear, laugh without hiding, and even help the younger children who sometimes visited the ranch. She began to understand that her past did not define her. She could choose who she wanted to be, and she could create a life of safety, kindness, and hope. One quiet evening, she walked through the fields, watching the sunset. She thought about the girl who had run through the desert weeks ago, scared and alone. She realized how far she had come. She was not the same person anymore. She was learning to trust, to heal, and to grow. She had found strength in herself, in the rancher, and in the animals who had become her friends. The Apache girl knew the road ahead would still have challenges. She knew there would be moments of fear, sadness, and uncertainty. But she also knew that she was no longer powerless. She had survived the worst, and now she was learning to live. With every chore, every smile, and every small victory, she was building a new life, one filled with hope, trust, and the promise of safety. As the stars began to appear in the sky, she sat quietly on the porch, thinking about the days to come. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the rancher, for the animals, and for the quiet moments that allowed her to grow. She knew that healing would take time, but she was ready to face the future. She had survived so much already, and now she was ready to thrive. The ranch, once a place she had only hoped could be safe, had become her home. It was a place of learning, of trust, and of quiet courage. She was no longer just a frightened girl running from her past. She was a survivor, a learner, and a child slowly discovering that the world could be gentle, that kindness existed, and that she could finally belong somewhere. Years passed, and the young Apache girl grew into a strong and confident young woman. Life on the ranch had taught her patience, hard work, and the value of kindness. She had learned to care for the animals, repair fences, and help in the garden. She had learned to read and write, discovering a love for stories that showed her she could face challenges and still succeed. Most importantly, she had learned that she could trust people again. The rancher, now older, watched her with pride. He remembered the frightened girl who had appeared at his doorstep years ago, bruised and trembling, unsure if she would survive another day. Now she walked with confidence, speaking clearly, laughing freely, and helping others who needed guidance. The rancher often said that she had a gift, a strength and courage that came from surviving hardship and choosing to grow. One morning she helped the rancher feed the animals as the sun rose over the fields. She moved quickly, carefully, but with grace and confidence. The chickens clucked around her, the cows followed her calmly, and the horses nuzzled her hand as if greeting an old friend. She felt a deep sense of peace in this routine. It was a life she had earned, a life built on patience, courage, and care. Even though life was peaceful, memories of her past sometimes returned. She thought about the people who had hurt her, the fear that had once filled her days, and the lonely nights she had spent hiding in the desert. But instead of fear, she now felt gratitude for her journey. Those memories reminded her of how far she had come. They reminded her that she was no longer a powerless girl, but someone who could face challenges and overcome them. Over time, she began helping other children who came to the ranch. Some were lonely, some had suffered hardships like she had, and some simply needed guidance. She taught them how to care for the animals, how to tend the garden, and how to face their fears. She spoke gently, patiently, always remembering how important kindness had been in her own life. Slowly, the children began to trust her. just as she had once learned to trust the rancher. One day, a small group of children arrived, and she noticed a young girl sitting quietly in the corner, eyes downcast and hands tightly folded. She reminded her so much of herself at that age, scared, unsure, and carrying pain from the past. The Apache young woman walked slowly toward her, kneeling down to speak at eye level. "It's okay," she said softly. "You don't have to be afraid here. You are safe." The girl looked up, her eyes wide with hesitation. The young woman smiled gently and offered her hand. "Would you like to help me feed the animals?" she asked. The girl nodded slowly, a small spark of hope beginning to grow in her eyes. Watching this interaction, the rancher stood nearby, smiling quietly. He knew the girl had become someone remarkable, not just a survivor, but a guide, a mentor, and a source of hope for others. He realized that the life he had offered her years ago had not only saved her, but had allowed her to create a ripple of kindness that extended far beyond the ranch. The young woman continued to grow, learning new skills and taking on more responsibilities at the ranch. She worked alongside the rancher, tending the fields, caring for the animals, and teaching the children. She also took time for herself, exploring her Apache heritage, learning old songs, stories, and traditions. These connections gave her a deeper sense of identity and pride, reminding her of the strength and resilience of her people. As the years went on, the ranch became more than just a home. It became a place of learning, healing, and growth for everyone who arrived. People came from far and wide, seeking guidance, care, or simply a safe place to be. And in every small act of kindness, whether feeding a chicken, guiding a cow, or comforting a scared child, the young woman left a mark, showing that compassion and patience could change lives. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, she stood quietly on the porch. The animals settled around her, and the children played in the distance. She thought about her journey, the desert, the fear, the pain, and the uncertainty she had once carried. And she thought about the rancher who had believed in her when no one else would. She felt gratitude, deep and unshakable, for the life she had been given, for the lessons she had learned, and for the opportunity to help others. Her thoughts turned to the future. She knew there would still be challenges, moments of fear or sadness, and unexpected difficulties. But she also knew that she was ready. She had survived the past, learned from it, and built a life of purpose and strength. She would face whatever came next with courage and patience, just as she had faced every challenge before. The young woman smiled as she watched the children learning and playing. She realized that her own story, filled with hardship and fear, had given her the ability to help others. Her pain had become a source of strength, her fear had become courage, and her loneliness had become a desire to create a safe place for those in need. She knew that she could make a difference in the lives of others, just as the rancher had made a difference in hers. Years later, she would often reflect on the moment she had first arrived at the ranch, frightened, bruised, and unsure if she would survive another day. She remembered the fear, the tears, and the pain, and she realized how far she had come. She had grown into someone strong, compassionate, and wise. She had built a life of safety, trust, and purpose. And most importantly, she had learned that kindness and patience could heal even the deepest wounds. The rancher, now older and slower, often watched her work with the children and animals. He felt pride, not just in what she had accomplished, but in the person she had become. She had taken the lessons he had offered and made them her own. She had learned to trust, to care, and to lead with patience and compassion. She had turned her past struggles into a source of strength and hope. One day, as the sun rose over the ranch, she stood at the fence, looking out over the fields. She felt the wind on her face and the warmth of the sun on her shoulders. For a moment she closed her eyes and smiled, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the desert, the fear and the pain. She remembered the kindness of the rancher, the trust of the animals, and the joy of learning. And she knew that no matter what came next, she was ready to face it. Her life was no longer defined by fear or pain. It was defined by strength, kindness, and hope. She had learned that even the darkest moments could lead to a brighter future, that trust could be rebuilt, and that courage could grow from the hardest experiences. She had survived, she had healed, and she had found her place in the world. As the stars appeared in the night sky, she sat quietly on the porch, surrounded by the animals and children who had become her family. She whispered a quiet promise to herself, to continue helping others, to continue learning, and to continue living a life of courage, kindness, and hope. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she was ready for whatever lay ahead. The ranch had become more than a home. It had become a place of healing, growth, and opportunity. And she, the Apache girl who had once run alone through the desert, had become a guiding light for others, a living reminder that even in the face of hardship, hope, kindness, and courage could prevail. And in that quiet moment, as the night settled over the ranch and the world seemed still and peaceful, she knew one simple truth. She had survived, she had healed, and she had finally found a life where she truly belonged.